Gracene and Jennifer, thank you for taking time to do this third call in our series on education and what should be our nation's priorities moving forward in education to better teach our kids and to better respond to the needs of the new economy. I think we've spoken a lot about classroom sizes. We've talked about ratios of students to teachers. We've talked about wages for teachers, and we've talked about individualized lesson plans so that kids are treated as individuals in their learning abilities. Um, Gracene, uh, tell me what it's like as a teacher when you have 12 students versus 24 students.
Well, when you have 12 students, it's very easy to see individual growth. You can give a student 12 students in your classroom. You can see someone improve over time because you can remember their work. Because 12 students, nobody gets lost in the shuffle. The students that we're always most concerned about are, the student who does really, really well on their own in a classroom, in a large size classroom, they're going to do well. The students who struggle seem to take a lot of your attention. But those students in the center of your classroom, if they start to falter and you can't notice it because you have so many other students, you're looking at their work, and then you might lose them. And your goal is to get as many up above that average level as you possibly can. So when you have 12, it's very easy to keep track of their growth or their lack thereof. But it's easy to find where you're going to see a hole, a misstep in what they're learning, and you can dial it back with that individual student and still maintain a classroom lesson that's going to be successful.
Jen, we've spoken in the past about what it's like to have kids actually be a part of and engaged in designing their own lesson plans and designing and being a part of their education journey. Can you speak a little bit more about that and what that means to kids and to teachers?
Well, again, it's sort of along the same theme as what Gracene is saying, that when it accomplishes the same result, but when you involve kids in choosing and being a part of the things that they want to learn, the things that they care about, rather than just having a teacher who stands in front of the classroom and just imparts information that you're supposed to absorb. But if you have, for example, a project about the American Revolution, and a child is deeply interested in some particular battle or some particular thing that happens and decides, like my son did, to make a video to explain to the other students and to go more deeply into that topic, the result is a deeply engaged child because it was something that they cared about, and they brought themselves into it. And that goes from the youngest child to the oldest child. When children have a say in how they're learning and what they're learning, there's still guidelines that you have to teach to, but that doesn't mean that it has to just be one way. You need to, we want to allow teachers flexibility and students flexibility so that learning can happen many ways.
There's a lot of discussion about charter schools versus public schools versus private schools. I know that both of you worked in both. Gracene, in particular, you tell me stories about working in other states, not just Pennsylvania. What the difference is in the infrastructure and the facilities, and in the supplies even that students have. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why it's important that public schools are just as good as the best private school?
It is amazing, Kevin, and I can't say it enough. It's amazing the differences that you see in different schools. And some of the districts that I've worked in, and I'll use Oklahoma as because that's always my go-to. When you see that these students, those teachers are working so hard, but the school system doesn't have the resources to keep a classroom looking like a classroom. The teachers are spending their hard-earned dollars to try to get as much interesting information to the students. They might have a smart board or Promethean board in their classroom, but it doesn't work. They don't have the funds to fix it. They sometimes don't have enough desks, so kids share space, take turns. They don't have the resources for crayons. They don't have the resources to have cleaning supplies in the school. They don't have nurses or enough social workers there to help the students. And the city or the state might supply a police officer to patrol the halls of an elementary school because he's supposed to be or she's supposed to be the person that will break up a conflict. And it just goes against everything. We want schools to be the most, next to their own homes, we want schools to be the safest, most comfortable places that students can be so that they can learn and blossom and grow and want to be there and be productive. And it is just the opposite than versus some of the better private schools or even some of the better public schools that have all of the resources because that's just how the tax dollars work. So you see where the best of the best in some of those very poor schools, the best of the best, sometimes can't even make it to the lowest of some of the better schools because they just don't have the opportunity.
We also talked about whether it would be worthwhile to invest in public schools and what that investment would bring to communities, to cities, rural and urban areas. Jen, what's your thought on that? And can you tell us a little bit about more what your thoughts are on investing in children? And is that a worthwhile endeavor?
I don't think anyone's going to say that not investing in children or investing in children is a bad idea. I think, but this is a problem that we as a society have tried to solve for hundreds of years. How to make better schools, and so it's a hard answer. It's nothing Gracene and I are going to be able to give you an answer on how to make it better, but I would say the first step is to speak to teachers because I feel like everybody in the world has an idea. I think everybody went to school and they have this idea, well, how hard can it be? There's this material, you teach it to them, they take a test, and it's so not that. That's not what good teaching or good learning looks like. And I think that too often money gets thrown at problems without doing it in a thoughtful way. And to me, a thoughtful way is involving teachers and students. I think again, with that same idea, if you involve students in the process, you're going to get buy-in and better answers. And I think they deserve more. And also, they deserve our respect. I think the more you respect your students, the more they respect themselves and the better the outcome. So I guess the short answer is yes, definitely we want to invest in our students, but we need to do it in a way that's really more grassroots, that involves teachers, involves administrators, and involves students, not people from on high telling you how to fix it.
It so reminds me of the conversations I have with my teams in healthcare. As a change agent in healthcare over the last 30 years, the dumbest way to go about change is just telling your team what you're going to do. It never works. It just doesn't work. And I think too often in healthcare and in education and in jobs where small businesses need to grow and prosper, we don't let the people doing it at the table to have the dialogue and the discussion. In order to have the best changes possible, we need to have the teachers and the students suggest to become a part of that change. Just like in healthcare, nurses and doctors need to be the leaders at the table who are saying, these are my experiences. This is what I've done. This is what I've seen. Let me help make change. Too much is done by people who think they know what they're doing instead of know what they're doing. Maybe that's a silver lining of this pandemic, that having so many parents have to become teachers maybe it's taught them to know and respect, love, and appreciate teachers more because it's not that easy. It's hard to do. What are your thoughts on that, Gracene?
Well, I think just like you said, Kevin, the pandemic has allowed us to notice some differences that aren't all bad. It hasn't been a horrible thing. It's been a great learning experience for all of us, but we rethink every industry. We rethink farming. We all farm. Our farms are different now. We rethink our workspace Do we all need to be in offices? We rethink medicine. My elderly parents have met with their doctors online. We rethink everything. And yet when we think about rethinking education, we want to rethink one small program, put it into place, look for a result overnight, and be like, well, that doesn't work. So guess what? A new something comes through. And why don't we rethink education? And I love what Jen said. Why don't we involve our students more in what we're delivering to them and how we can make their life? We want them to learn. Nobody wants a dumb society. So we want them to learn. And when you read the articles and get all the information on 21st century and what the demands, what are these 21st century skills? Well, they need to have collaboration and they have to have courtesy. They have to be creative. Okay, well, that's what we used to be able to do a long time ago. I mean, I learned problem solving skills. I learned how to be creative. But now what has happened where we're just not involving our students enough in any of their outcomes? What we're not allowing them to do is take ownership of their own success. And isn't that what we want for all of our children, whether they be our students or own children out there in society? We want you to own your success so you can be proud of it and grow on it. So yeah. Yes, Jen, let's get those kids involved.
Do you think as teachers and myself as a teacher too, we spend enough time teaching our students how to learn or just what to learn?
What to learn. I mean, I think we like Jen said earlier, here's the information, here's the test. And I just don't think we've given them enough skills to be inquisitive, innovative, find ways to learn better.
Jen, same question.
No, absolutely. Because I think the ultimate goal, right, is you want the children in your care to become lifelong learners, right? It's not when school ends, suddenly you stop learning, right? You want to have that inquisitive mind, and the thing that schools should be that spark, that gets your mind going so that you always are trying to learn more about something. And it should be obviously an environment that encourages, your love of learning. And I mean, I think, the way that we assess children needs to, it's so much harder for teachers. I mean, Gracene, I cannot stress this enough. All the things that we're asking are so not easy for like when I say assessment, like testing is one little thing. There's so many. Assessment is the idea, right, of assessing whether or not the students are absorbing or taking in and embracing all this information that you're working with. And so that's about writing, that's about giving a talk, that's about making a video, that's about making a poster, that's about, there's so many ways. That's about organizing a march on something that's important to you, that you can assess. And there's still too often, it's a very cookie cutter way, A, B, C, D, 90 to 100, blah, 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 blah. And that is not real life. That's not how people will assess you in the real world. And I think that's the other thing, is you want to make it real for kids. Like the learning feels like it's real, like the output, something that's coming out is tangible. It has meaning, it has value. It's not 90 to 100.
So another part of education is how we educate adults when they change jobs and when the skill sets of the nation are in flux. For instance, how do we get learning to people who change industries when they go from the coal industry or the fracking industry to wind and solar, and we build infrastructure that makes a difference for people's lives by putting broadband in all over states and all over rural areas? How do we conceive of adult learners learning in the new generation?
Good question.
Great question.
Well, we could hope that they still have the desire to want to learn, and really that can be that's economic. They want their job. So I think that would be a motivator. But I also think, how did we all learn to drive an automatic or a stick shift, whichever we learned on differently. We wanted to do it, so we put our efforts forth in order to do so. I think if we offer opportunities to learn, I mean, you don't have to have an educator in every industry, but what you could maybe have is an educator who can travel from different industries, because Jen will tell you, I mean, I have a concentration and Jen has a concentration, we know, but we also know how to teach information. So if you give us the information, we can find ways, a good teacher will find ways to make that new information digestible. So maybe you have different types of organizations that you can jump. I mean, I can't teach foreign language, but I know I might be able to teach other things that can help people change whatever their new business would be. Or you have somebody who's coming in from the old and somebody who's coming in from the new to help understand what concepts need to be accomplished to get to the next step.
I think too, it's like any I mean, I'm just thinking about, right, when you come fresh out of college, at least this was my experience in business or whatever. Like, I came from a liberal arts school. I had no skills. I had done a lot of thinking, but I didn't have any skills. And you go into a training program, right? And I think, if anything, we're learning with COVID, there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do online. And then the last piece of it might be when you walk in the door, that there's a month long, where you kind of pull it all together with a live person, would be one idea. I think it's also the same as with any student. I think you have to respect people. These are people who are coming maybe later in life. They haven't been in school for a while. It's, I don't know how you make that happen, but it's the idea of you always respect the learner. Whoever the new person is, the learner, just be sure it's a respectful environment. And I think you pay them. Why? It's usually, if you have to go get an education, you pay for it and you go into debt. Well, if the world is changing and we need people to be in the new world and be productive, then the 6-month training program should pay them to learn something new. And, I feel like then you get buy-in, they feel respected, they feel a part of it. It's some of the same things we already talked about.
Well, I want to be respectful of time. So I want to wrap by saying thank you to all the teachers for all the things you do. I am pretty certain that the country in particular right now in this moment in history is super excited to get their kids back to school. And maybe that one big moment in time where teachers are really appreciated more than they ever have been, much like frontline workers in the ER. You'll get a lot of thanks when they come back, but sadly and unfortunately, the love won't last. So enjoy the praise right now. It's your moment to shine. And maybe we could shape policy in the future and make teachers' classrooms better and smaller, teachers' salaries bigger and more robust, and learn that we can have children participate in their education plans that are more individualized for that learner's needs. Thanks again.